Welcome to StoryGrove, where we share screen-free stories for kids without noisy advertisements. We hope you enjoy. It was the kind of afternoon that begged for an adventure. The sun hung high in a cloudless blue sky, casting long shadows through the towering pines of the woods behind the neighborhood. A light breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the earthy scent of damp soil and wildflowers. Birds chirped lazily overhead, and somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of a lawnmower buzzed. But here, deeper into the trees, the world felt quieter, full of secrets. A group of 4 friends trudged along a narrow, overgrown trail, ducking under low-hanging branches and stepping over fallen logs. Max led the way, a confident grin plastered across his face. Max was the sort of kid who never left home without a plan, or at least without stuffing his backpack full of snacks, a compass, which he barely knew how to use, a flashlight, and a handful of gadgets that might someday come in handy. His messy brown hair stuck out in every direction beneath his favourite baseball cap, and his sneakers were scuffed from countless adventures. Trailing close behind was his younger sister, Lucy. Lucy was quieter, but sharp-eyed, always scribbling away in her sketchbook. She had a knack for noticing things others didn't, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the tiny critters scurrying underfoot, the odd shape of a rock or cloud. Her dark hair was tied back in a braid, and she carried her sketchbook everywhere, along with a pocket full of coloured pencils. Then there was Sam, the tallest of the group but also the most reserved. Sam didn't say much, but when something broke or needed fixing, he was the one everyone turned to. He wore an old tool belt his grandpa had given him, filled with small screwdrivers, a pocket knife and bits of string and wire. His hands were always busy, whether it was fiddling with a broken toy or building makeshift contraptions from scraps. Bringing up the rear was Benny, the storyteller. Benny had a wild imagination and a knack for turning even the most ordinary outing into an epic saga. He was always talking, spinning tales of treasure maps, secret codes, or mysterious creatures lurking just out of sight. Today, he was halfway through explaining how he'd heard about buried pirate gold, hidden somewhere in these very woods. "You guys laugh now," Benny said, hopping over a log, "but when I find that treasure, you'll all wish you'd listened." Max rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "Sure, Benny, right after we find Bigfoot." Lucy grinned, sketching a cartoon version of Benny wrestling a pirate ghost. They wandered deeper, past familiar trails until the trees grew thicker and the ground softer beneath their feet. Birds flitted overhead, and the occasional squirrel darted past, but otherwise the woods felt still, like they were holding their breath. Then something caught Benny's eye. "Hey, what's that?" he asked, pointing toward a patch of tangled vines and dirt. Max squinted. Beneath the greenery, something metallic glinted faintly in the sunlight. Curiosity piqued, they all hurried over. Pushing aside branches, they revealed a strange cylindrical object about the size of a large toy rocket. It was covered in grime, the paint chipped and faded, but beneath the dirt, they could make out dull red and silver stripes, along with odd symbols none of them recognized. It looked like it had been there forever, half buried, forgotten. "Is it some kind of old toy?" Sam asked, crouching down to inspect it. Lucy tilted her head, already sketching its shape. "Maybe, but it feels different." Max knelt beside it, brushing dirt from the surface. The rocket felt heavier than it should have, solid and cold to the touch. On one side, barely visible through the grime, were rows of buttons and switches. "Guys," Max said, glancing up, "I think we just hit the jackpot." They carried the muddy rocket back to Sam's house. Once inside the garage, they propped it up on a couple of old crates and got to work cleaning it. Sam fetched a rag and a bucket of soapy water, carefully wiping away the layers of dirt. The more they cleaned, the more details emerged. Smooth metal panels, rows of tiny glowing lights, and strange symbols etched into the sides. Lucy sketched furiously, capturing every curve and button. "It's not like any toy I've ever seen," she murmured. Benny poked at one of the buttons, half joking. "Think it'll take off?" Nothing happened. Max examined the base, noticing a small switch hidden near one of the fins. "Hey, what's this?" He flipped the switch. Immediately, a low hum filled the air. Everyone froze. The rocket vibrated gently, the symbols lighting up in soft blue and green hues. A faint, rhythmic pulse echoed from within, like the heartbeat of something waking up. Guys, Benny said, taking a cautious step back. Is it supposed to do that? The humming grew louder. Sam's eyes widened. Maybe we should, take it outside. Max didn't argue. Good idea! Together, they grabbed hold and dragged the humming rocket back out into the yard, plopping it down in the middle of the grass. The vibrations intensified, the light pulsing faster. For a moment, they all stood frozen, half expecting it to explode. Then, with a shimmer like heat waves on asphalt, the rocket began to grow. The metal stretched and expanded, the red and silver paint gleaming as the rocket transformed before their eyes. It grew taller, wider, until it loomed over them. A full-sized spaceship, complete with a shiny cockpit, blinking control panels and sleek fins. The humming quieted, replaced by a soft, steady pulse, almost like the rocket was breathing. They stared, open-mouthed. Lucy whispered, Did we just grow a spaceship? Max stepped forward cautiously, placing a hand on the smooth metal surface. It was cool beneath his fingers, but somehow it felt alive. A hiss sounded and a door slid open, revealing a glowing interior filled with buttons, levers, and colourful screens. Benny let out a low whistle. Okay, this is officially the coolest thing we've ever found. No one moved at first, too stunned to speak. The four friends stood frozen, the massive spaceship towering over them. The last hum faded, replaced by a quiet, rhythmic pulse, almost like the rocket was alive and waiting. The open doorway glowed faintly, casting soft blue light onto the grass. Max glanced around at the others, heart pounding. Well, should we check it out? Benny grinned, eyes sparkling. You're seriously asking? Of course. Sam gave a hesitant nod, and Lucy clutched her sketchbook tightly, wide-eyed but curious. Together they approached the open hatch, stepping inside one by one. The air inside smelled faintly of metal and something sweet, almost like fresh rain. Soft lights glowed along the walls, flickering gently, as if sensing their arrival. The interior was bigger than it looked from the outside. The walls were smooth, curved metal, with swirling patterns etched across their surface. Control panels covered in blinking buttons and holographic screens lined one side, while cushioned seats and safety harnesses circled the centre. The floor beneath their feet felt solid, but as they walked, it emitted soft vibrations, like the ship was purring. Max ran his hand along one of the walls, marvelling at the smooth, cool surface. Tiny lights danced beneath the metal, following his fingers. This is incredible, Lucy whispered, sketching furiously. It's like it was built for us. Sam approached a glowing console, inspecting the buttons. Each was labelled in symbols they didn't recognise, but beneath them, the labels shifted into words in English. Look, he said, pointing. It's translating. It knows we're here. Benny slid into one of the seats, grinning. Do you think it comes with snacks? Suddenly, on the screen, a message appeared. It said, Welcome, explorers. Please select your destination. A holographic globe appeared in midair, rotating slowly. Tiny dots glowed all over it, each labelled with names of cities and countries. Max exchanged glances with the others. We could go anywhere. The globe shimmered and suddenly it zoomed outward, past Earth through the swirling expanse of space. Planets appeared one by one, orbiting the glowing sun at the centre. Wait, we can go out there? Benny breathed, pointing at the solar system. Lucy's eyes widened. Mars! Let's go to Mars! Max nodded. Yeah, Mars! Sam hesitated for only a second, then added, It's got to be Mars. Benny gave a dramatic bow. To Mars it is. Max reached forward and tapped the glowing red planet. Immediately the walls shimmered, and the seats adjusted, pulling harnesses gently across their chests. The hum beneath their feet grew louder, more focused. Everyone buckled? Max asked, excitement and nervousness bubbling. Ready! Lucy called. Let's see how fast this thing goes. Benny cheered. Sam simply nodded, gripping the armrests. A countdown appeared on the main screen. Mundram a dusra. First, with a soft but powerful rumble, the rocket lifted effortlessly, the trees shrinking below, the neighborhood fading away. In the cockpit, dials and lights danced. One screen showed their speed, another showed engine thrust information. Max couldn't help but grin. "This is the best day ever." Benny naturally added, "Wait till we tell everyone we went to Mars." Sam raised an eyebrow. "If anyone believes us." The ship rumbled beneath them, the vibrations building steadily as they pierced through Earth's atmosphere. Inside the cockpit, Max felt himself being pressed back into his seat. His arms felt heavy, and his cheeks pulled toward his ears as the force of the launch, those famous G's he'd heard about, pushed on them like a giant hand. "Whoa!" Benny gasped, his voice sounding deeper and stretched from the pressure. "Anyone else feel like they're turning into pancakes?" Lucy giggled, gripping the armrest tightly, her braid flattened against the headrest. Sam's eyes were wide, but he kept a tight grip on the dashboard, eyes darting to the gauges. "Everything's stable, I think." The cockpit shook slightly, making the buttons rattle. Max squinted out the window, the clouds zipping past in streaks, but they didn't have time to celebrate. A bright flash caught Benny's eye. Max, I think we're flying kinda low?" Max glanced at the display, realizing they'd skimmed a little too close to the ground during takeoff. Out the window, the towering spires of the Eiffel Tower loomed, way too close. In the streets below, tourists screamed and scrambled, phones flying out as a massive spaceship zipped by overhead, rattling cafe tables and knocking over a few berets. "Oops!" Max yelped, yanking the control lever. The ship wobbled, lurched sharply upward and shot back into the sky, leaving a stunned Paris behind. "Note to self," Lucy muttered, laughing breathlessly. "Avoid world landmarks." "Think we'll make the news?" Benny asked, still wide-eyed. Sam shook his head, trying not to smile. "Let's just focus on not crashing into any more famous monuments." Finally, Earth shrank behind them, and sky darkened quickly. Soon the deep black of space stretched endlessly ahead. The ship's vibrations settled into a soft hum, and the stars glittered all around. Inside, everything slowly went eerily, weightless. Benny noticed it first, floating slightly above his seat, legs dangling. "Whoa! Guys, I'm a balloon!" He laughed, flipping upside down accidentally. Lucy's sketchbook drifted past her face, pages flipping lazily in the zero gravity. Max pushed off his seat, spinning gently in the middle of the cockpit. "This is awesome!" But zero gravity came with problems. Sam reached for a control lever, but every time he pushed against it, he floated backward. He grumbled as a stray wrench from his tool belt floated past his nose. Benny tried to grab a bag of snacks from Max's backpack, but it slipped from his hands, scattering granola bars like meteors across the cabin. One granola bar smacked Max square in the forehead, making everyone burst out laughing. "I think we need to figure out how astronauts do this without looking ridiculous," Lucy said between giggles, as she floated gently toward the ceiling. Eventually, Sam figured out how to stabilize them, attaching their harnesses to adjustable tethers so they could move around without bouncing off every wall. They spent a few more minutes practicing, Max pushing off gently from one wall, Benny pretending to swim through the air, and Lucy sketching the floating chaos as best she could. Suddenly, they noticed the red planet looming ahead, glowing like a jewel in the black sky. Max grinned, tightening his harness. "All right, crew, next stop, Mars." They exchanged excited glances, the earlier mishaps forgotten. But just as Mars grew larger on the screen, a faint red flicker passed through the control panel. It went unnoticed by the excited kids. The kids scrambled to their seats, tightening harnesses. Max gripped the controls, trying to remember everything he'd learned from the ship's tutorials. The ship trembled slightly as they descended. Below, jagged cliffs and winding valleys stretched across the dusty landscape. With a gentle thud, the rocket touched down on a wide, flat plain. A small ridge loomed in the distance, and the sky glowed a dusky orange. "Guys, we're on Mars!" Max breathed. Benny's grin stretched ear to ear. "Let's explore!" Lucy was already sketching the view out the window, her pencil flying across the page. Sam glanced at the control panel. Oxygen levels outside are low. We'll need those suits. In the rear of the ship, they found 4 sleek, silvery spacesuits perfectly sized for them. They wriggled into them, helmets snapping into place with satisfying clicks. The hatch hissed open, and they stepped onto the dusty Martian ground. The surface crunched softly beneath their boots, fine red dust swirling around them. The air was thin and eerily quiet. "Look at those rocks!" Benny called, hopping slightly and laughing, as the lower gravity let him bounce higher than usual. Lucy carefully picked up a strange, round pebble, examining it before tucking it into a pouch. Sam wandered ahead, eyes scanning the horizon. "Hey, what's that?" They hurried over to find the broken remains of an old Mars rover half buried in sand. Its wheels were crooked, antennas snapped, and panels covered in dust. "It's one of those old exploration rovers," Max said, awe in his voice. "Wonder how long it's been sitting here." Lucy knelt, sketching its battered frame. Sam wiped dust off a plaque on the side. "Looks like opportunity." Benny saluted. "You served well, little guy." A sudden gust of wind whipped past, stirring the dust around them. Sam looked up sharply. Max, that sky looks weird." The orange horizon had darkened, a wall of swirling dust rolling toward them, fast. "A dust storm!" Max shouted. "But back to the ship, now!" They sprinted across the plain, the wind howling louder, pelting them with grit. Inside, they yanked off their helmets, gasping for breath as the hatch sealed behind them. But something was wrong. The control panel blinked red and the steady hum of the ship faltered. Sam's eyes widened. "Something is wrong. We've got a problem." Max exchanged worried glances with the others. The red warning lights flickered across the control panel, casting an ominous glow inside the rocket. Outside, the dust storm howled, rattling the hull like a giant trying to shake them loose. Max wiped sweat from his forehead, eyes scanning the flashing messages. Sam crouched by an exposed panel, pulling out a handful of wires. "I found some disconnected wires, but it also looks like the storm jammed one of the intake valves with sand. Power's down in one of the thrusters." Lucy and Benny exchanged nervous glances. "Can we fix it?" Lucy asked. Sam didn't hesitate. "We have to." Max nodded. "All right, let's figure this out. We're not staying on Mars forever." The crew sprang into action. Lucy flipped through the ship's onboard manual, pages glowing as she scanned diagrams. Benny, surprisingly focused, helped collect tools and cleared dust from vents. Sam directed Max to the rear of the rocket, where the intake valve was partially buried under layers of fine red sand. "Here," Sam said, handing Max a hose-like device. "This suction tool should clear out the clog, but you'll have to guide it from inside while I monitor the readouts." Max climbed into the maintenance hatch, carefully maneuvering the tool. Lucy shouted instructions from the cockpit. "Left, now, back a bit." Benny watched from the side window, eyes darting between Max and the roaring storm. For a tense few minutes, the only sounds were the faint whir of machinery and the occasional loud thump as wind buffeted the hull. Finally, Sam gave a thumbs up. "We're clear." The warning lights blinked off one by one, replaced by a steady green glow. The screen showed a message. Thrusters restored. Ready for departure. Everyone let out a collective sigh. They took off their helmets and prepared for launch, hearts pounding, as the dust storm continued to swirl outside. Max took the controls, glancing at his friends. "Let's go home." The engines roared to life, vibrations building beneath their feet. The ship shuddered as it lifted, pushing against the storm's fierce winds. For a moment, it felt like the storm might drag them back down, but the thrusters held strong, propelling them higher and higher, until Mars's dusty surface faded beneath them. Space wrapped around them once more, calm and silent. Benny did a celebratory flip in zero gravity, narrowly missing a floating wrench. Lucy grinned, sketchbook in hand. "I'm going to fill an entire book with this trip." Sam checked the dashboard. "Course set. We'll be back before dinner." They gazed out the windows as Mars shrank behind them, the red planet becoming a tiny speck against the vast black canvas of space. But the excitement wasn't over yet. Hours passed as they floated serenely through the stars, Earth growing larger on the screen. Benny experimented with zero gravity, juggling floating snacks and giggling uncontrollably when one bounced off Max's forehead. Lucy taped her sketches to the walls, each one a snapshot of their incredible adventure. The towering cliffs of Mars, the broken rover, the raging dust storm. Sam double-checked every system, scanning for glitches. "Everything's stable," he said finally, though he couldn't shake the nerves twisting in his stomach. As they approached Earth's orbit, the screen showed a new message. "Re-entry sequence available. Please prepare for atmospheric approach." Max exchanged glances with the others. "This is it, the tricky part." Sam nodded. "We'll need to adjust the angle just right, or..." Benny gulped. "Or we burn up." "Yeah, or bounce back into space," Sam said grimly. Lucy bit her lip. "No pressure, huh?" They spent the next few minutes going over the re-entry instructions, plotting their trajectory, adjusting the ship's alignment. Max kept a steady hand on the controls, his heart hammering. The blue and green marble of Earth loomed ahead, beautiful and daunting. The ship vibrated gently, systems humming beneath their feet. Benny floated next to Lucy, whispering, "Think anyone's ever going to believe this story?" She smiled, sketching one last picture, the Earth glowing beneath them. Max exhaled, gripping the control lever. "Ready?" Everyone nodded. "Let's bring her home." Now close to Earth, the blue and green expanse of Earth stretched out before them, vibrant and inviting. From space, it looked peaceful, like a shimmering marble hanging in the darkness. Inside the cockpit, however, peace was the last thing on anyone's mind. "Re-entry sequence locked," Sam announced, his voice tight but steady. "Brace yourselves." Max tightened his harness, glancing over at the others. Lucy clutched her sketchbook to her chest. Benny was wide-eyed, and Sam's fingers hovered tensely over the control panel. Outside the windows, space was silent, serene, but then... The ship tilted downward, nose angling toward the blue curve of Earth. The vibrations began as a faint hum beneath their feet, quickly escalating. They hit the upper atmosphere like a pebble skipping across a pond. The quiet blackness vanished, replaced by swirling clouds and streaks of brilliant orange. The windows glowed, the edges of the ship rimmed in fire. The rumble grew louder, a deep, bone-shaking roar that vibrated in their chests. Max felt the G-forces return, pinning him back into his seat. His arms felt heavy, his breath short. "Whoa!" Benny gasped, voice strained. "I feel like an elephant is sitting on me." Outside, the sky burned. Plasma flames licked the edges of the ship, brilliant white and orange swirling against the blue backdrop. Lucy's braid whipped around as the ship shook. She clutched the armrests wide-eyed, marveling at the inferno just inches beyond the hull. Sam kept his eyes locked on the controls. "Angles holding. Hold steady." The force intensified, every bone in their bodies feeling pulled and flattened by gravity's grip. Sweat beaded on Max's forehead as he fought to keep control. For several long stomach-churning minutes, they plunged through layers of atmosphere, the roar deafening, the heat shimmering across the metal skin of the rocket. Then, the fire eased, the sky lightened, shifting from glowing orange to clear blue. The shaking subsided, the ship levelled out, weight returned to their limbs like a heavy blanket. They had made it. Max glanced at the screens. "We're coming in over town." Lucy peeked out the window, pointing. "Is that the soccer fields?" Sure enough, below them, the neighbourhood soccer field stretched out like a green patchwork. Tiny figures dotted the fields. Kids, parents, coaches, all frozen, staring up at the glowing spaceship descending from the sky. "Guess we're making an entrance," Benny breathed. The ship's landing thrusters flared, and with a gentle rumble, they touched down right in the middle of the biggest field. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then, chaos erupted. Spectators crowded the sidelines, mouths hanging open, phones snapping photos. Max exchanged glances with the others while putting his helmet back on. "Well, here goes nothing." The hatch hissed open. One by one, they stepped out onto the grass, spacesuits gleaming, looking every bit like heroes from another world. The crowd erupted into cheers and shouts. Kids ran up, wide-eyed. Adults crowded around, firing questions. Max smiled sheepishly, waving. Lucy held up her sketchbook like a badge. Benny grinned, soaking up the attention. Sam, ever practical, kept an eye on the rocket. As soon as the crowd's attention shifted, the ship shimmered, shrinking smoothly back down to its toy-sized form. Max quickly scooped it up, tucking it under his arm. Later, after the excitement faded and the soccer game resumed, Max led his friends quietly to the woods behind his house. They found a hollow beneath an old oak tree, perfect for hiding the rocket. Max knelt, setting it carefully into place, and he glanced back at the others, grinning. "Same time next weekend?" Benny laughed, "Absolutely." Lucy nodded, already flipping to a fresh page in her sketchbook. Thanks for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it and feel calm and cozy. If you'd like more screen-free, ad-free and wholesome stories, don't forget to follow our channel. Or hop on over to our YouTube channel for even more wholesome screen-free tales. See you next time.